welcome to UberCube After Dark. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and I'm going solo this evening as we present to you the super sexy swinging sounds of the Double Mint tapes featuring D. Gallen, Magic, and Stu, and yours truly. Without further ado, please sit back, kick up your feet, and sip on your favorite libations as you enjoy tonight's show. Thanks for listening.
Drafting, right? Any cube.
Right.
Is the upper echelon of the power level of that cube what is giving you the most pleasure out of drafting that cube? Or is it the puzzle of, I want to figure out where all the pieces are to figure out what works, what doesn't work? What is your most favorite part of drafting a cube? Is it playing a cube? Is it building the deck? Or is it the draft? Derek, I'm asking you first.
Derek, lean forward.
You're at the top. So
I was trying to lean into
first.
my mic.
Derek, I would like to ask you, what is the most fun aspect of drafting a cube? And I think I would angle this towards a cube that you're less experienced with, right? What do you like?
Oh, a cube that I'm less experienced
Yes.
with.
Not like, hey, here's a vintage cube, or here's or here's one of your own cubes that you've drafted 30 times.
How about for reference, Ryan Sachs's Synergy Cube?
Perfect.
He's kind of doing the Caleb Gannon thing, but he's going wild.
Well, you mean like the classic cube that he had?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I drafted that so many times.
So what's the part of that experience that you like the most? Is it the draft? Is it the building? Is it the playing?
It's the gameplay.
It's the gameplay? Okay.
Yeah, the drafting is not that interesting to me in that kind of cube.
Do you ever enjoy the drafting or the deck building more than the gameplay experience?
No.
Okay. May?
I know a lot of people that do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I really like playing the actual games. I like playing with the cards.
So it's all about the gameplay, completely agnostic of the cube. It's always like the gameplay is the 90% of where you get your enjoyment from.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a cube isn't a spreadsheet. It's like it has to be played to understand what is actually going on with the cards.
Okay.
And one of the things I enjoy in playing the games is to see, because drafting and deck building is still kind of theory crafting with some front loaded information about
like an RPG
in general. Yeah, just drafting in general, Magic in general. The fundamentals say that this works, etc., etc. But when I actually sit down to play, and you get to see how your theory actually plays out and how the cards actually interact with each other, you can come to a lot of realizations about what's working and what's not working. And yes, it's a very small sample size, obviously, so I can't be too analytical about it, but I think just feeling and seeing the cards interact with each other is the thing that gives me the most
joy.
Takeaways.
Okay, that's cool. I'd like to extend that question out to Magic as well, right? So the drafting, the deck building, the playing of the deck. What do you enjoy the most, and why?
I'm not going to be a politician when it comes to my answer.
Okay.
But I think that those answers that you are seeking for comes from the player types that you're trying to ask. I am more into deck building.
Okay.
I love the deck building. Okay. I love being able to look at a pack and trying to look at and read between the lines and gather as much information as I can, and then try to figure out which direction, what kind of deck that I can build.
Okay. And so, Anthony, I'm going to point that question towards you.
Yeah.
Again, deck building, or I should say drafting, deck building, playing. What parts excite you the most?
I like the lines of play. I like the advanced lines of play. I do.
So you like the playing aspect?
Yes, and I do like to win. So I do play to win. And I have to intentionally, forcefully turn that off. I have
Turn what
to
off?
the winning portion. Like, so
Okay.
I don't want to be braggadocious. I don't want to be like I beat you. So oftentimes, like, so we'll use Derek. Derek's a really great player. So if you are, because you 3-0'd my artifact cube. So if I beat you, my bragging, for you to know, would be for me to be silent. I'm just going to reflect on the fact that I beat you. So I want to work really hard to beat him and be a better player, because I know his lines are really strong and he's paying attention to what he's doing. And I want to be intentional in my lines and be a better player and try to observe and report what he's doing. I try to mirror mimic some of the players I play against. Like, for example, this weekend when I played against Parnell, he's a better player than me. He just is. He's been playing the game a less amount of time than me, but he's been playing more concentrated than me, and he's better than me. So while I'm playing him, I want to beat him, but part of me wants to also learn from him, right? So I'm taking note of his lines of play, not just like their game-winning advantages that he's tossing my way, that he's like, he did this thing and I didn't recognize this line, nor do I want to throw my arms out and go, oh my God, I didn't know that. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, I just learned something, but I don't want to give away that observation to my opponent until the match is over. Once the match is set, right, and I lost, he 2-0'd me. And there were things, I made some very careless lines because I was taking time to observe and report his lines of play. I'm about the gameplay, so I'm learning whilst trying to be a better Magic player, but I'm a better curator than I am a Magic player. I think Magic said that too. She has that
yeah, I'm in the same boat.
I'm a better designer. I can make the games you guys enjoy. I don't know if I'm as good at playing you're a better player than me. Derek's a better player than me. Magic and I might have a wonderful game together. It's just doing nothing. I'm Shivan Dragon, pack one, pick one every time. It just makes for a different type of game, right?
I like to think that I'm a pretty good deck builder.
Play lines of my cube at the LGS. I built the deck. I handed them off to players. They played them and piloted them better than I would. I can build the hell out of them. I can construct them, but I falter on the play lines. I'm not going to lie. Because I'm spending more time learning what Derek and May are doing and you're doing than actually playing the game of Magic. So I enjoy building the deck. I very much enjoy playing the deck, but I think I'm playing it. Actually, I'll give a quote from our good friend Jason Brinkley, who was on one of our episodes we did recently. He's our statistician that works. He's PhD. He says he is attempting to learn more ways that you can lose at Magic opposed to winning. Reflect on that.
Derek, I'd like to ask you a question. Okay?
Sure.
When you draft, you sit down, you get your cube out, and you're like, hey, I've got a bunch of people here. We're going to draft my cube. Super excited. What is your primary focus when you're sitting in the draft? Is it, okay, I'm going to just enjoy my draft? I don't want to say I'm looking for like percentages, but how much are you looking at, I want to draft my cube. I want to look at how the other players are enjoying my cube and what archetypes they're looking at. Like, are there things that exist in your mind space outside of just I'm drafting my cube and, maybe to look at what other people are doing?
My primary goal when I draft my cube is to see, I try to draft things that are not doing so well or under-supported or new or something strange, like in a recent update, or like I try to focus on something that isn't like a conventional, like something that isn't I know, like a very desirable archetype unless it comes to me. But like I try to explore something to see how viable it is. Very, very rarely when I'm drafting my cube am I just trying to thrill the draft. I don't really like need to with my cube because like it's not, I don't know, just doesn't give me the same, doesn't give me like anything I can really take away from.
Yeah. Do you all find as curators
arguably sometimes yes it is valuable, but like I guess I just get more innately curious about what, like anything that might need attention that I need to draft, or yeah.
That was going to be my follow-up was, do you guys, as curators, find that, especially, let's say, a new set's come out, right? Holy moly, there's like 15, 20 cards that are like perfect for this cube. New set comes out, you make a bunch of changes. How much does that impact even the first draft, second draft, whatever the case may be? Like, I'm looking for changes to the way that the players are drafting my cube, because now I'm looking at, I've put a card or 2 cards or 3 cards, maybe even, heaven forbid, a whole new archetype into this cube, and I'm thinking this is something that I think could be hugely impactful, power level, fun factor, the whole 9 yards. I want to know what people think about this. How much of that are you kind of keeping an eye out for upon like the first draft, second draft, third draft, whatever the case may be? May, I'll look at you for something like that again, because you're the, curator of like the most copied cube ever of all time. Yada yada. What do you think about that?
Definitely not true. It is statistically not true.
I heard Milton Bradley's actually signed a contract with you recently, and you're gonna get like Monopoly level.
Congrats!
Yeah.
Something about like you're above
First board game.
As so long as I get to be the boot piece. Fun fact about the Fake Cube. This relates. A lot of the archetypes that have been developed in the Fake Cube were player developed. For example, Selesnya Wolves was not an archetype I intentionally put in, but it is an archetype I intentionally supported. Because the way that I kind of curate my environment is that I look at data and what people kind of figure out for my environment, because I'm more of I am laying out tools for you to try to figure out and find your own fun. And that's my approach for curating a cube, of trying to give these different players cards that they want to see.
Gotta be pretty satisfying as well, that like people find their lanes like that. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I just added these cards, and now your players play it, and they're like, oh my goodness, that was incredible. Like, what a more fun and varied experience that I get from your cube, from like you adding these few cards, right?
But my point is that when it comes to these bigger updates, which I do significantly more often than the smaller updates with the Fake Cube, because I've learned, as I've unfortunately gotten more popular, that it's better for me to take more time, because my changes need to be more meaningful. When when the cube first started, there was a lot more smaller updates here and there, because I was just like, sure, let's try throwing this in, let's try taking this out, let's try swapping things around and seeing what sticks. I'm more likely to be loosey-goosey with it because I just didn't have the data or the information that I have access to constantly now. And because of that difference in information that I have as a curator, not only from my actual real-life pod and online, I'm able to estimate and find more lanes that maybe I could support a little bit more, and, things that I think might be a little too strong. Like, for example, with Mill particularly, Mill had the horse situation of, hey, this card's a horse. And I'm like, no, it's an important card. It's not a horse. And then it started being, no, this card is a horse. And then third time, it's like, I literally played this card and only this card, Archaeomancer, and then played this card.
Strong card.
It's a horse. And I'm like, okay, all right, I get the point. But point is that a lot of my approach with it comes down to not only what the archetypes that I'm trying to build, encourage, whatever are, but also what my players are actually playing. And that's what roots my changes and decisions. And when it comes to my updates, that's something that I consider and write down, because even if it's not in my maybe board of things that I add or subtract, like Swans I recently added because it wasn't in my maybe board, but it's something that came up on Twitter. It came up in my pod a lot. It came up as suggestions here and there when I was like, hey, how can I increase my land drop archetype? But point is that when I'm making these updates, I'm a little bit more fluid with it. I'm a little bit more easygoing with it. And because my specific environment is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very evolved based on how the players have played it, rather than just the lanes that I've created. I get the privilege to give players more of those tools. I follow the fun.
Derek, I have a question for you.
I love follow the fun. I want to say that right away. I love follow the fun.
It's exactly what
That's what I was about to ask Derek. So, Derek, that we've adopted your mantra. Your mantra has become kind of our euphemism here at UberCube is follow the fun. Could you define...
It's because it's a key part of game design.
Yes,
Well,
it is.
It is, but...
Because it is. Because game design is literally trying to just define the word fun.
The key question, the challenge that was brought up earlier was the new Atraxa, right? And it was tension.
Which is so fun. Amazingly fun. Lovely card.
Let him finish, please.
Yes, so... Define the fun. How do we find the fun in your cube environments? Where does it exist? What is your definition of fun? And how does it correlate to power level and what we talked about in a recent episode as far as bombs? Do you find analogies between the two, or are they differentiated in some way? Like, find the fun, that's your mantra, put it on a shelf, and then power level. How do you find the correlations? I can see those correlations to emphasize within the Fae cube. How do you find the fun in your cube?
Sure. So you have to look at goal setting and how the environment tries to hit goals. And so if my goal primary, I have two competing goals, but one always takes priority. And one of them is, the main one is that it has to approximate constructed Magic play patterns, specifically a mix of Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy. So the decks and the gameplay are going to evoke the play patterns of those formats in some regard. Typically, like not combo stuff, but like aggro mid-range control, I guess, in the traditional sense. And I use lands as a mechanical sort of like architectural foundation by which to execute that, because so much of constructed Magic is informed by mana bases. Every single constructed format is defined by what's possible with the mana.
I have a follow-up question.
That is I think irrefutable.
It's a heuristic, but I want to interrupt that one because I have experiences, and I just did it this past week. So the Triomes, let's talk about those. So the Ikoria Triomes, and then the recent Triome, New Capenna, right?
What about them? Yeah.
And so the challenge point that I've given to players, and I have experiences. So let's take it back for a minute. So as I draft, I have a problem with laser eyeing a little. I'm too efficient. I am looking for lines of play. I'm very good stuff oriented. I have to force like myself to go outside that realm, right? Okay. And that's why I appreciate some of these thematic cubes, because when I play a Pirate Vintage cube, I want to get the best of the best, right? Okay. Whereas the Triomes, the New Capenna Triomes, we'll call them that for namesake.
You just call them the Triomes.
Yes. So they kind of generate these processes where you want to draft the best of the best, right? Like, so you're looking, when I'm drafting, I'm looking at, it has one pip of blue, one pip of red, one pip of green, and I have a Triome that will allow me to do that, and a fetch land that will allow me to get it. I'll go outside that envelope. What are your thoughts on the Triomes as far as the health of cube environments, allowing drafters...
If you can play your spells, they're great.
But
are you trying to break? Wait, is this about my cube, or is it just...
It's about generically speaking. So it's more of a... Does it open up lanes to allow you to play all the things in the cube, making a cube homogeneous or generic?
Can I expand? Oh, okay. I would like to expand on this a little bit.
Carry on, Keebler.
I want to expand on your question for Derek. How much do you wish to support generic 4/5 color good stuff decks in your cubes?
Let's throw Atraxa into that, right? Castable Atraxa.
You can pull up my cube right now if you want to see it. I tagged you guys in self-promotion, and then I can talk about that.
Grab it.
So let me use my previous question that you asked me to lead to this one.
Sure.
So my cube is about constructed play patterns, which are then informed by the mana base. the mana base in my cube is designed so that you can have a very, very, very high quality mana base, and you are limited more by your deck building ability than you are by your colors. So in my cube specifically, cards like the Triomes, well, all of the mana is there for you to be able to build a deck that is 3 colors and can splash a 4th or 5th color. You are not punished for having greedy mana bases in my cube. You are punished for not building a streamlined deck with that mana. So I actually I release the floodgates on you and not try to punish you for playing a lot of mana. I try to say you can lean into this and build something very powerful and very consistent, and that's a challenge. And the people that generally do well in my cube are very good deck builders, and that's just kind of been an environment that people find really fun because they don't feel like, because a lot of people walk away from drafting my cube as though they're like, oh, okay, I could have made a lot of different decisions and done better at focusing my deck more instead of just being greedy, or building something that ran like a machine more. The people and so the mana is the reason why all that works. So taking it into your question about Triomes, I'm just on a general sense, I'm very pro Triomes in Magic. You know, from just like objectifying them a little bit. I personally believe that land types on lands are some of the most powerful things that they've ever done.
Yes, agreed, 100%. Yes, they are.
And one of the most interesting explorations we've seen recently was Dominaria United.
Yep.
Where Domain was brought back, and they were able to use it in ways that really were compelling to me, because you had off-color kickers and Domain, so that allowed you to play with, that made mana types relevant, or land types relevant for gameplay and for splashing and kicker and all that shit.
You're now rewarding people for playing all 5 colors, basically.
But I have a counter
in a massive way. Like, it's not that these cards were just like, oh, these are okay. These are very, very powerful.
You can play 2, 3, 4, or 5.
I have a counterpoint, and it's going to involve May. May, could you pull up the double mint gum cube, please? On Cube
that's my placeholder. It's my placeholder name for the updates.
I'm in love with this name, by the way. I'm not gonna lie to you. This name's amazing. But I want a viewpoint. So May and I are kindred spirits. We're thematic builders. We don't break singleton. We're a thematic.
Well, can I finish my thought?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Dig into your thought. Yes, go ahead.
So Triomes are. I'm not saying they're like that everyone should accept them as like just being a net positive. I think that my perspective on Magic and what I find fun about Magic makes the Triomes very appealing to me as a player and designer.
What is that?
I personally
I want you to explain that. Why do you support the Triomes? What do they bring to Magic that appeals to you?
So I think that people being able to play more colors I think people being able to stretch their mana and build decks that explore stretching their mana bases and the implications of that from a deck building standpoint and how gameplay plays out. Because remember, they enter the battlefield tapped, and like
they do.
As somebody who tries to play the most powerful lands in Magic, mana-fixing lands, not lands objectively, like Bazaar of Baghdad and Gaia's Wheel would be.
Yeah.
There's a real cost to playing tap lands. And especially when your format is so defined by 1 and 2 mana spells.
Or even by the color schemes that you set out in the archetypes that you have designed for your cube, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be specific to whatever arbitrary standards we want to put right now. It can just be these are the pairs or the three colors that I've put out as what I kind of put out as the signposts for my cube. But now you have lands that you can fetch for one of those basics, all three colors.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a huge difference.
I run
and
five.
Let me just say one more big
them.
thing before I zoom back in, which is I think that Magic isn't. I'm not saying this has to be this isn't something that is a forever change to Magic, but I think currently there's a lot of signals, the Triomes being one of them, that playing around with more multicolor support and multicolor payoffs is a thing that the ship at WotC has leaned into a little bit more, both in limited and obviously in constructed Magic too. And I think that being able to effectively build decks that are more colors or that splash colors for advantages is a bit of design space that is very interesting to me, because land types mattering is really cool and really potentially very powerful. And if you see cards in my cube, a lot of them have been selected specifically because they take advantage of land types. Gush, Mystic Sanctuary, Snuff Out, Daze, Curd Ape and Lone Lion, etc., etc. I can exploit a lot with land types. Triomes are part of that, but I don't have the same viewpoint of somebody who says that multicolor is homogenization. I think there are decks in cubes specifically that are cubes and ways that people build decks or ways that people support multicolor in cubes over the past 10 years that are very homogeneous. If you sit down and play my cube, you will see, hopefully, as a lot of my regular drafters often do, that your deck can be three colors, or often my decks are three colors, but then the splashes are very carefully selected, and the implications of that and how they have to build their mana base based on that, and what kind of space opens up for their deck for both power level wise and flexibility, are all these kind of micro choices that help them build more streamlined decks and build something a little more powerful. And I think that it's more fun for me to see decks that are more multicolor but also more focused in how they play out. So it's not just Signet into Planeswalker, into Sweeper, into whatever. That it's not just greed. It's it's a game plan.
I'm going to say
greed is a game plan, but it's a lot more focused and strategic than just good stuff pile. And yes, you can build a good stuff pile in this cube. But if, for instance, a lot of people at my table try to build that deck, then all those decks become very watered down. You're actually rewarded for trying to build something tighter than you are for being more greedy.
Is that because the choices for the fetches / the land base have become so much more competitive, right? So I take lands, certainly fetches, and I will say in the last couple of years the Triomes very, very highly, right? And I like the comments that you made about how they've expanded the colors as far as the draft choices. Man,
that's
me and you have
perspective
talked about. I was going to say, man, you and I have talked about the fact that you actually dislike the fact that lands becoming homogenous, multicolor lands, multicolor fetchable lands. You're not a big fan of that, right? You would much prefer the lanes within the cube be much more defined, and to kind of put the pressure on the drafters to have to make the effort to go down that lanes rather than just draft the five color good stuff. Is that accurate?
The answer is that I consider myself more familiar with building low power environments, and part of building those low power environments is understanding how strong is your fixing, how fast is your aggro, and my perspective when it comes to 5-color good stuff. I don't hate 5-color good stuff. I think 5-color good stuff is fine. The problem with 5-color good stuff is that if your 5-color good stuff decks are becoming the more prominent, more powerful things because people are able to just have the perfect fixing or whatever, you don't have the problem with 5-color good stuff. You have the problem with the aggro decks not being able to punish the 5-color.
But is there a way to avoid it? Because when you look at the color pie and where all the bombs are, like, look at your typical draft environment. I'm not going to lie, I am kind of always looking for, especially if it's a cube that I'm less familiar with, I am looking for where are the bombs. I don't really give two hoots where the color is. I'll figure out the land, because if I don't have a bomb in the pack that's passed to me, I'll take the fixing, and then if I do, I'll take the bomb, and then I'll worry about more fixing later on. Like,
sure.
And maybe that's a problem when it comes to a drafting perspective, drafting strategy, but maybe that's also an issue with the card quality that's available. And, you know, you can take a look, you know, we looked at Ragavan. This is something we talked about earlier, right? Ragavan, 1 mana, tons of different abilities that it has, right? Where is sort of the responsibility on you? I don't want to just put it all on WotC because they're just, you know, drafting or printing cards to make money, but the responsibility on the cube designers, right? Where you got to think, shit, I don't want to just put a whole bunch of draft equity on a 1 mana creature that can create treasures and, you know, exile cards and you know, that kind of stuff, right? I want to be able to create something that really, really pushes the choices to be important, and not just, hey, draft the good cards. The mana fixing just exists to be able to enable players to be able to play those cards. And I kind of feel that we're in that place already right now, right? Because the mana fixing does exist. The lower mana curve and very, very powerful cards in those 1, 2/3 CMC space exists. How do you kind of manage that? Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to include those, but also want to keep the fun and kind of power level, you know, again, I suppose just to keep it fun.
The answer is, again, I'll reiterate that the problem doesn't come from innately Triomes being some problematic force per se. The matter is in the context of when I looked at the double mint gum placeholder cube, etc. I look at this list and my first instinct is to only just look at, okay, what's the fixing going to look like? What is the kind of signpost going to look like? And my answer is, I guess the question follow-up is, how much am I going to be punished for picking more than 1 color? When I look at this list, I see a lot of really strong, aggressive decks, and with very, very high density. And sure, somebody could pick the 5-color decks. It is an option that is there, and I'm sure for a lot of different matchups, like I think that mid-rangey, multicolor, 3-4 color type area could be really good versus like a 2-3 color control deck.
Okay.
Versus, say, the 5-color good stuff I consider more of that mid-range pile of, I'm just taking the best cards and I'm just relying on my card quality to win.
Right.
But as soon as the aggro deck pulls up, then you're just kind of boned.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask
that,
actually.
is that there's going to be a lot of aggro decks.
It's really hard to not draft that as well when you're like presenting it like perfect fixing, fetches, triomes, like all the 5-color good stuff cards are like, man, that's such a, and like, let's face it, a lot of those cards that are put in
for environments like the fake cube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
and
the fake
when a card costs 3 or 4,
support 3 colors, but it doesn't need the Triomes to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's slow enough to support it. And
so
it means
I intentionally
that I'm not having
omit
to boost
those
up
from
aggro
certain
to compensate
thematic
for
environments. Yes.
the amount of fixing.
Yeah. The thing that May's saying that I'm going to reiterate is that there's no cost to Triomes. The power level of them
There is
spikes
not.
significantly. And like if the cube is a turn slower, there would be a lot of cards that would be like more that would have a lot more negative net negative play experiences. But the environment is really hostile to stumbling and to just reactive decks in general. I always tell everybody to be proactive. Not everybody listens because there's still people that think that they can just counter everything and win with the Teferi, and then they lose. But that's fine. Like I can't stop people from.
I love
drafting
Teferi.
decks. I love Teferi too. I think Teferi's a really strong finisher for like slower
It's a low
controlling
pick.
decks.
It's a low pick for me.
There's the reason that stuff works is is what we've been saying, which is one, there's I'm not punishing you for being multicolor. I'm punishing you for your deck building choices.
Right. Okay.
Like one of the biggest call outs people will get, and I always answer the same way, which is like, why don't you put Wasteland in the cube? And I'm like, because I'm not trying to make you lose the game for playing Magic. I'm trying to make you lose the game for not building and playing well. Mm-hmm. And there's a shift that happens there. It's like I'm trying to make you enjoy the experience more by opening the floodgates and letting you kind of freely build something as powerful as possible. And I'm giving you the tools to do something that like isn't conventionally just generic good stuff cards. I'm giving you powerhouse cards that like lean into synergistic gameplay.
Do you look at Wasteland as a single removal spell that just kind of punishes someone for a bit of a greedy mana base?
I think Wasteland is the antithesis of what this cube is all about. So
you're talking about your cube specifically, right?
Yeah. I'm also very, very against non-games of Magic.
I want to ad lib here. So in my 2-hit giant cube, I allow people to develop an entire mana base with no obstruction whatsoever.
No wasteland.
No wasteland.
No field of ruin. No strip mine.
No strip. None of the above.
Okay.
And I want players to just play to their full development of a cube to enjoy we'll call it quote unquote double mint gum experience, right? 2 players versus 2. Well, it's 2 players versus 2 players. 2v2.
Great name.
Right. It's fantastic. But I want them to feel all the feels of playing Magic with no obstruction or no concern that their lands are going to get destroyed. But I don't run any kind of tri-lands or any kind of triple Magic where they can exploit, not quote unquote exploit, but I don't want them to push it too far. I give them AB duels, I give them fetches, I give them all the things. Mm-hmm. And the fun factor has been elevated because it's allowed the experience not to be focused on the sub game of people taking out your lands for aggression purposes. You just put them out there, you enjoy playing your Squirrel Crats or playing whatever, and you live it to. I want you to live the dream in so many words, right?
Well, it has less of an impact if you're relying on those individual lands for your colors, right?
Yeah. And it gives all the feels.
I think it's there purely to really punish greedy mana bases.
Yes. So I push these punishments with the wastelands and strip mines and all the things. In my powered vintage, I push that same feel in my horror cube because I want those to be slightly competitive 1v1 designs. But when we go over to the 2v2 designs, I want people to just experience Magic.
So I'm going to push back on saying that Wasteland and Strip Mine create competitive environments because those are cards that are the most zero sum of all zero sum exchanges. And
how about Field of Ruin or Ghost Quarters?
Those cards are often seen as free win cards, and like that to me isn't really a way to show skill expression.
Do you agree with that statement?
It's high variance gameplay. Like Channel is not a high skill card; it's a high variance card.
Do you agree with the statement that they're like free win kind of cards?
Yeah,
I also do. Yeah. I think there's.
I think cards like Hymn to Torok and Strip Mine and Channel and and Tinker and all that shit is just like very, very, very high variance kind of cards. And
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. 100%.
I think there's room for high variance, high skill gameplay. I think that's what Magic is, honestly, like at its core engine.
Yes.
But like, I think like personally, I enjoy Magic when there's no tension on allowing like making a non-game out of an otherwise playable game, and like that's just my perspective on it.
Do you want it to be the most interactive? You want there to be almost a chess game between the two players, right? You want them to face off. You want there to be a board state. You want there to be decisions that they each have to make. Right,
almost all my games,
because if you do,
the games in my cube,
and I see that
decided
like,
by creature combat.
Yeah, Derek,
Tarmogoyf is a good card in my cube.
Yes, so
and that was like one of the
I love that
like pet card goals in my cube. It's like I want Tarmogoyf to be a good.
Would you even say it's a pillar of your
It's
cube?
a terrible card. Tarmogoyf
Not a terrible
is an awful card.
It's an awful card.
Oh, it's a dreadful card. It hasn't been a good card for a long time. Has it?
No, it's not good.
It's not. I don't think it's.
I'm going to call a spade a spade.
I don't think it's a good card.
It's not.
I think there's a lot of cards that have so thoroughly overtaken Tarmogoyf as certainly as a 2-drop and maybe as a 1-drop. Like, would you rather pay 2 mana for a Tarmogoyf or 1 mana for
a Death Shadow?
Ragavan?
Let's go with Ragavan.
The Death Shadow is bigger, right?
Death Shadow.
I have an interesting wrench in the mix.
Okay.
Derek and I actually have pretty similar curating directions that we're doing. It's just the difference of the power level that we're building.
Yes.
I'm more familiar with building lower power environments because 1, they're more budget friendly anyways, and 2, because I like seeing fixing as an obstacle. I like again, I'm giving you the tools to find your own fun, but the way that I'm doing this is in a way that you kind of have to work your way around of, okay, there's a bunch of gain lands. This is communicating. I'm not going to be dropping a bunch of scary 1-drops like a Goblin Guide or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a way that I can communicate with my drafters what they're going to be expecting from the power level, how slow the game's going to be via the lands. And just like Derek's cube, my cube also supports 3 colors, like on average, because again, opposite power scale of mine is slow enough to support it rather than you're being punished for not being fast enough and not building a good deck for the environment, right?
Sure.
Versus in my environment, it's more of you're being punished for not building a very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just say good deck because it's easy, because I can't think.
Okay.
But the way that I'm punishing you is for either being too greedy or not creating your pile of
good stuff,
for not being in a lane and not making yourself a decently high quality deck. Instead, you're just kind of being like, oh, this card's good, this card's good.
I think you can.
Taking all the lands and trying to make it work.
I think you can use good stuff as kind of the overarching, like, hey, I have enough.
Yes,
And it's kind of like go down the check, fixing power outliers, right? As we've talked about.
I appreciate you guys joining us on the show. Final thoughts about cube curation. What we got was Triomes are divisive yet interesting. We got that they can create 5-color good stuff, or they can be amazing. We got that you could actually double down or double mint gum a couple of these cards and get more rewards for players. They don't have to seek out interesting play lines.
Final thing I'm just going to say of the Triomes.
Yes, please.
They're not for every cube.
Yep.
But
that's it.
Exactly. That's it. They're not for every cube.
Yep.
I will agree. They're not for every
my
cube.
state too.
Yes, I will agree 100%. And I think it comes down to maybe an individual philosophy of whether or not, and I know that we've talked about this, do you want to support 5 color good stuff or 4 color good stuff, depending on how your cube is constructed. Do you want to support that archetype in your cube, right? Do you want to have people be able to just open packs and be like, I don't really care if that 2 or 3 color bomb. If you would like to know what a bomb is, please go and check out our bomb episode. But would you look at a card and be like, that's a bomb? I'm just going to draft it. I don't really care what the mana requirements are because I know that there is support for me to draft 4 or 5 color bombs in the cube and just go at it, right? So if you don't have that support, then great, right? You want to try and kind of keep people in their lane. Otherwise, maybe the lane is open for you.
Wow, it was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you for listening to UberCube After Dark, the Double Mint tapes, featuring our special guest, Derek Gallen, as well as Magic, our other host, Stu, and yours truly, Anthony Adams, a.k.a. UberBear. If you love the show, we would truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite player. Also, UberCube has been fortunate to become a new affiliate with Alter Sleeves. When you use our UberCube code, which will be included in the show notes, you can receive 5% off your purchase. If you want to support the show, please consider making all of your playmats and mouse pad purchases through our Inked Gaming affiliate link, which will also be contained within the show notes. You can find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod. You can reach us at UberCubeMTGPodcast at gmail.com. Or we would truly love it if you can join us on our Discord, where we're having just an amazing amount of discussions, #UberCube. You can also check us out on our Patreon landing site, /UberCube. And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is happy cubing.